She missed her flight. What this incredible billionaire revealed transformed her life forever. Sarah sat on the edge of her seat at the gate, the announcement of her missed flight ringing in her ears like a cruel joke. She had done everything right, a meticulously planned schedule, wake-up calls, and even a heartfelt promise to Mia that today was the day things would change. Yet, here she was, gripping her phone as if it could erase her glaring failure. A job interview for a managerial position, a sorry spark of hope in her bleak reality, vanished in an instant. A wave of despair crept over her, every missed chance colliding with the weight of her daily grind, reminding her of the struggle to provide for Mia, the bills stacking up, and the judgment from neighbors who thought her multiple low-paying jobs made her less than worthy. A soft voice pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. "You look like you could use a friend," a tall man with an easy smile offered. He had an air of confidence and warmth that momentarily soothed the storm inside her. Jasper was his name, and as they exchanged pleasantries, Sarah found herself unwittingly unloading the burdens she had worn like armored her endless juggle of work shifts. The relentless judgment from those who didn't understand her fight, and her most fervent wish, a better life for Mia. Each word released like a dam bursting, exposing the vulnerable parts she had fought to protect. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she spoke, Jasper listened with a depth of understanding that was almost alien to her. The compliment that lingering talent for storytelling lay dormant within her sparked a flicker of something she thought lost to the years of hard labor and desperation. Each word slipped from her tongue like a reluctant whisper. And soon, Sarah found herself daring to envision a life beyond the daily grind, weaving her struggles into narratives filled with hope and resilience. But with this revelation came fear. What if she wasn't good enough? What if the world judged her as harshly as she often judged herself? Just as she began seeing faint outlines of a path, the unease returned, creeping into the cracks of her newfound ambition. The pressure of her current job loomed over her like a dark cloud, feeding her anxiety about the coworker who had always seen her efforts as a threat. Sarah's gut twisted at the thought that her blossoming passion might ignite jealousy. Anxiety clawed at her, revealing all the voices that warned her never to reach too high. Pushing those thoughts away, she focused instead on the future Jasper painted for her. Inspiration coursed through her, thrilling yet terrifying. With stakes rising, the world outside faded as Sarah grappled with the inner turmoil. Could she really face the judgment ahead? Just as self-doubt began to settle in, an unexpected event at the airport thrust everything into chaos. A commotion erupted, strangers spilling and shouting, panic rising. Instinctively, Sarah's heart raced. The dream she had begun to grasp slipped further from her reach, obscured by uncertainty. What if this was the chance she could not afford to lose? The path ahead started to blur, dark shadows lurking. The urgency to protect herself and Mia amplified. Would she dare emerge from the shadows of fear, or would the competitive voices around her drown out her hopes before they even had a chance to take flight? The chaos at the airport unfolded like a slow-motion film, every detail intensifying Sarah's anxiety. Shouts echoed, a cacophony of distress and confusion that seemed to mirror the turbulent thoughts racing through her mind. The crowd surged, a wave of bodies pushing against each other as they scrambled for answers, and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Amidst the growing panic, Jasper remained a calming presence, his eyes scanning the scene with an unsettling mix of concern and determination. With an unexpected clarity, he reached for Sarah's hand. "Stay with me," he urged, his voice steady against the chaos. The simple touch grounded her, the warmth reassuring her that she was not alone, even in the face of turmoil. "Let's find some shelter, somewhere we can think," he suggested, leading her towards a less crowded area of the airport. The sudden rush of adrenaline forced her to focus, the surrounding chaos fading into a low hum as she followed him. But even as she moved with determination, her mind raced with a million questions. Would she ever get another chance at that job? The inner conflict churned inside her like a storm. For years, she had lived within the confines of her own doubts, shackled by the fear of judgment from others, the relentless cycle of work and worry eclipsing her dreams. Once they found a quiet corner, Sarah's breath steadied. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the world seemed relieved within this moment. Jasper flashed that warm smile again, igniting a flicker of hope within her. "No need to thank me. We all need a little support sometimes," he replied, his gaze unwavering. In this safe space, surrounded by the trembling shadows of her worries, Sarah felt a subtle shift within her. This was not just about the potential of a job anymore. It was something deeper, a revelation that stirred her dormant passion. "Maybe I've been focusing too hard on what everyone else expects me to be," she thought, the clarity washing over her like a wave. Storytelling could be my path, my way to challenge the shadows. But as excitement began to replace her fear, reality crashed back. The chaotic events around them were far from over. News rippled through the crowd, a baggage delay, a system outage. But it all felt trivial compared to the deep realization that lay before her. The next steps could either solidify her evolution or sink her back into silence. "Do you really think I can do this?" she asked, her voice quivering with vulnerability as she glanced at Jasper. The weight of her inquiry hung between them like thick fog. "I believe you can," he replied, telling her with more than words that it was time to reclaim her narrative. There it was, the challenge stripped of pretense, an invitation to step boldly into her potential. Would she seize this momentum, or let it drift away in the chaos? As the uncertainty loomed, clarity quickly followed. Sarah made a decision. She must take risks, must strive for something more, no matter how daunting it seemed. In one moment, the glimmer of hope ignited broader possibilities, laying bare her resolve to transform not only her life, but the life she hoped to forge with Mia. "Let's find my phone. I need to reach out. I have to make some connections." The words spilled forth with unexpected conviction, as if she was reclaiming every piece of her being. This was no longer the same woman who had missed her flight. She was ready to find a different way forward. But just as she turned to search for her phone, the airport's emergency alarm blared through the terminal, sending a ripple of dread through the crowd. Who was about to emerge as a new obstacle? Would her personal journey be interrupted again before it had even begun? The blaring alarm pierced through the air, a jarring interruption that snapped Sarah back to the present. The turmoil resumed, an unrelenting tide as people began to panic again. She felt the weight of the surroundings pressing in on her, the noise drowning out her newfound clarity. Was this the universe's way of reminding her that change was hard, that it came with its own chaos? Jasper's grip tightened around her hand, drawing her focus back to him. "We need to move," he urged, eyes darting towards the nearest exit. Looking into his eyes, she saw a kind of determination that sparked something within her. Maybe this turmoil was just the start, the catalyst she needed to force her to confront her fears head-on. Taking a steadying breath, she shook off the ominous shift in the air. "No, I can't run away again," she resolved internally. For years, her tendency to retreat whenever obstacles arose had left her adrift. This moment felt different. There was power in her choice to stand firm. What's next? She found herself wondering, her ambition igniting just as fiercely as the chaos around them. "Let's find somewhere away from all this noise. I need to call Mia," she stated. The thought of reaching out to her friend pushed her forward with purpose. Mia had been the one person who believed in her storytelling abilities, who encouraged her to embrace her voice. If anyone could help her regain her footing, it was Mia. They navigated through the ebbing crowd towards a quieter corner of the terminal. Each step felt more purposeful than the last. Yet, as she fought to gather her thoughts, the insistent swing of her internal dialogue began again. Was she truly ready to embrace the storyteller within? Emerging from the shadows would mean confronting her years of self-doubt and stepping from behind a screen. Once they reached a secluded area, Sarah fished her phone out. The weight felt heavier than it should, her nerves tangling around the device like vines. Would Mia understand? Would she celebrate the emerging storyteller or question her resolve? Jasper leaned against the wall, watching her with supportive curiosity. "You'll be great. Just be authentic," he encouraged. His calm presence was strangely grounding, perhaps because he had seen her courage surfacing, even if she had not. As she dialed Mia's number, the phone rang with an irritating continuation of her anxiety. Yet, in those moments, she allowed her mind to wander to stories she had buried for so long. Imagining characters, their struggles and triumphs, she felt the pulse of her creativity thrumming beneath the chaos. Her heartbeats synchronized with the thought of freedom, of pouring her experiences into vibrant narratives. "Mia, it's Sarah," she began when her friend answered, her voice firm yet playful. She could hear the crackle of familiarity on the other end. "I've had a crazy day, and I need to talk about something. Something that might change everything." Mia's enthusiastic response filled her with warmth, igniting an ember of excitement within Sarah. She could feel the urging presence of her passion, urging her forward. "I want to write again. I want to share stories that matter, starting with my own." Yet, as she spoke, that liberation was shadowed by her rapidly rising fear. What if she fell flat? What if her story was not enough? Jasper's voice, low and steady, broke through her doubts again. "You're not alone in this, Sarah. You've got more than just your own journey to narrate." His words resonated deeply, an affirmation that her struggles aligned with the universal. This was the pivotal moment, the crossroads between safety and authenticity. Would she allow the chaos of the airport tour, the chaos of her past, to stop her from claiming her story? Sarah felt the urgency building within her. She had set this intention, but could feel the shadows lurking, ready to invoke doubt. "After this call, I'm going to write," she declared with newfound intensity, squaring her shoulders. It felt like staking a claim to her true self, one rooted in bravery, rather than fear. This is just the beginning, isn't it? But right in that chaotic moment, she was driven by conviction, not merely surviving, but choosing to thrive. The airport echoed with the back and forth of announcements, and amidst it all, she sensed something unfolding. Perhaps it was the path she had long avoided, a ripple transforming potentially into a wave. But what obstacles might she still need to face? Just as she finished her call, the alarm sound shifted, all systems going back online, signaling a return to normalcy. Real life was resuming, but was she truly ready to reclaim her narrative amidst it all? Her phone buzzed, with Mia's agreeing text, supportive words, wrapped in the excitement she had long craved. But as a deeper tumult stirred within her, Sarah realized that her journey had just begun. Would courage override fear, and would the tales worth telling rise from the depths of uncertainty? The noise shrank to a distant hum as Sarah lowered her phone, her heart still racing from the conversation. In sharp contrast to the chaos, a newfound clarity took root within her. This moment, this abrupt pivot, felt as if it were marking the dawn of her artistic rebirth. She observed the bustle of travelers moving around her with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They were oblivious to the internal transformation she was undergoing. "Did you mean what you said?" Jasper asked, breaking into her reverie, his brow slightly furrowed. "About writing again?" The question hung in the air, heavy with expectation. She looked at him, weighing his sincerity against her long-standing fears. "Yes, I did," she affirmed, letting the words wash over her. The admission felt intoxicatingly foreign, flipping her doubts inside out. "It's time I put my stories out there, no matter how daunting." His expression shifted to one of approval. That's the spirit. But, how do you plan to do it? The question jolted something in her. The kind of jolting that ignited her cerebral gears. Ideas rushed through her, wild and unbidden. The characters she'd dreamed about for years began to surface, their voices clamoring for attention. With a determined nod, she knew she had to chart a course beyond the moment of resolution. I have to write regularly. I need an outline, a routine. But your notebook? Jasper gently reminded her, tilting his head, eyeing the half-finished manuscripts she had left behind. The familiar pang of regret hit her again. It was a tangible reminder of her former self, the one that cowered in the corner, hiding from her aspirations. Oh, I've packed a few ideas for my book. She turned her gaze outward, focusing on the terminals around them, where strangers were embarking on their own journeys. But this time, it's different. I won't let it collect dust. Then let's set a plan, said Jasper, his earnestness serving as an unexpected anchor. What if you started by jotting down a few lines? Anything that inspires you. Maybe the chaos here could fuel your creativity. The idea churned in her mind. Their surroundings were electric. Countless stories played out with each frantic step. Maybe she could seize that energy. With a sigh, she pulled out her notebook from her bag, the surface a little worn from neglect. As she flipped through the pages, she envisioned filling them with her truths, her imaginings, a tapestry woven from the threads of her experiences. As she began to write, the words flowed, a rapid cascade of thoughts that nearly transformed into tangible reality. But then, without warning, the unease crept back. A question pierced through. Who would care about her stories? Were they significant enough to matter? The pencil paused mid-stroke, hovering above the blank page, and she could almost hear the echoes of her self-doubt reverberating in her thoughts. What if no one reads them? Jasper's voice cut through again, breaking her trance. What if they do? You're sharing pieces of you. That's the most genuine thing you can do. His eyes glinted with conviction that stirred something deep within her. He was offering her the most precious gift of all, belief in her own voice. What would it mean to write fearlessly, without the weight of judgment? Her heart raced as she scribbled a few more lines. Each word was a triumph, a reclamation of her long-neglected aspirations. The chaos around them faded, absorbed into her burgeoning world of characters and plots that threatened to leap from the pages. Determined, she resolved to confront her next hurdle, sharing these stories beyond the pages of her notebook. Who could be the first to witness this evolution? Would she dare to expose herself to the scrutiny of others? As they moved to a more quiet place, the ideal haven for her burgeoning creativity, the weight of possibility melded with uncertainty. Sarah's mind raced with names, people who had stayed by her side throughout the years, who had seen her vulnerabilities, yet still encouraged her dreams. Jasper, I want to gather a few people for a mini-launch, she declared suddenly, her pulse quickening. I want to share my stories before anything is finalized. It'll be honest. It'll be real. Do it, he replied with a grin that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Maybe it's time for you to reclaim your audience. The choice was made, but what if they didn't resonate with her voice? The anxiety surged, but wasn't enough to stifle her resolve. This was transformation, raw and vibrant, but the fear of judgment loomed ominously over her. As they walked, the world surged with life and promise, and Sarah, fueled by her aspirations, could hardly wait for the next steps. Amidst the anticipation of her burgeoning narrative, another unsettling thought lingered. What if the characters that she wrote about turned out to be reflections of her own insecurities? The sooner she stepped onto this path, the closer she got to answering the nagging truths about herself. But what happens when the lines between self-exploration and self-exposure blur? The cafe was quieter now, the rush of passengers having moved on to their gates, leaving an air of potential lingering in the clatter of coffee cups and quiet conversation. Sarah settled into a small table tucked away in the corner, feeling cocooned yet exposed, a paradox she couldn't shake. As she looked at her notebook, the blank pages felt like a challenge, demanding her truths. The decision to gather a few close friends for a mini-launch, pressed heavily on her mind. Could she truly bear their scrutiny? Today, she sought clarity rather than comfort, daring to probe deeper into her motivations. She picked up her pencil and began to write, each stroke a declaration against her doubts. What were her themes? What threads of her life demanded to be shared, and which would remain buried? With each marking on the paper, she dissected herself. Memories rushed in, disappointments mingled with fleeting joys. There was a frightening authenticity in acknowledging that her narratives might reflect her insecurities. How could they not? Yet, that's precisely what made the stories compelling. The characters would not only echo her struggles, but also weave the hope she'd fostered. With each line she crafted, her perspective evolved, transforming shame into strength. This process required vulnerability. She was digging into the shadows of her past fear of rejection, longing for approval, the relentless chase for validation. But what if the meticulous crafting of her stories allowed her to redefine those fears? The thought settled deep. Rather than seeking approval, what if this became an act of emancipation? Her heart pounded. What if her stories resonated? What if they provided comfort to someone wrestling with the same demons? This idea lit a fire within her. The choice to share wasn't merely about showcasing her work. It was about creating a connection, an existence that reached beyond her solitude. Suddenly, a familiar face broke through her musings. Samantha, an old friend from her college days, entered the cafe, her vibrant smile a beacon against the dull ambience. Sarah waved her over, excitement bubbling within her. "Samantha, I'm so glad you're here," she said as her friend approached, arms open for a warm embrace that felt grounding. "What's going on? You look intense," Samantha noted, taking a seat across from her. "I want to do something bold," Sarah started, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of apprehension and thrill. "I'm planning a mini launch for my writing. I want to share my first drafts, raw and unfiltered." Samantha leaned in, curiosity piqued. "Wow, that's a big step. Are you ready for that?" The question tumbled through Sarah's mind. She had been bracing for the daunting nature of sharing unfinished work, but now, faced with Samantha's sincere inquiry, she could only breathe deeply. "I think it's not just about exposing my stories, but finding my voice amongst friends who will understand. It has to be authentic." In that exchange, Sarah felt a pivotal shift, not merely the resolve to write, but a conviction to dig deeper into her experiences, to make them relatable. They spent hours discussing the themes pulsing in her drafts, and with each passing minute, Sarah unearthed more a glimpse of her character development, not only as a writer, but as a person. But layers of uncertainty remained. Was she embracing her narratives, or was she setting herself up for another round of rejection? The intensity of the moment was mounting. She was standing on the precipice of vulnerability. What if these stories faltered under the weight of expectation? As they wrapped their conversation, Sarah left the cafe feeling exhilarated, but also keenly aware of the mountain yet to climb. The stakes had transformed from personal fears to public sharing, but she had ignited a purpose that propelled her forward. Could she truly navigate the world that awaited her with honesty and bravery? With every intention to turn the page, she caught a glimpse of a new horizon. This was just the beginning of a journey she both craved and dreaded. In preparation for the launch, Sarah faced the last tangible barrier, reaching out to her selected friends and inviting them into her creative space. Would they see her growth, her vulnerabilities in her writing? The thought made her pulse race with exhilaration, but she had to follow through. Ready to take the leap, she fished her phone from her pocket, staring at the contacts that represented much more than mere names. It was time to write the next chapter of not only her stories, but of her very own narrative. Direct confrontation with her fears was on the horizon, and she was instinctively drawn to it. But who would answer her call? And what truths lay waiting in the shadows of her past? With determination tightening around her, Sarah's fingers flew over the contacts on her phone. She knew she needed to be strategic. Inviting the right mix of friends could make or break her launch. Each name illuminated a potential pathway, whom to include that would both challenge her and provide encouragement. Her pulse quickened as she hovered over Jenna's name. Jenna had always been an influential figure in Sarah's life, a source of unwavering support. Yet, she'd also been a mirror reflecting Sarah's insecurities, often standing as a reminder of the high expectations that Sarah felt burdened by. Could she risk putting her work in the spotlight before someone who might scrutinize every fleeting thought captured on the page? What if she analyzes my mistakes? Sarah mused internally, pausing under the weight of her self-doubt. Choosing to push through, Sarah pressed the contact, typing out a simple message. "Hey Jenna. I'm hosting an intimate gathering to share some of my writing. I'd love for you to join me." The instant she hit send, a wave of anxiety washed over her. What was she doing? Was this really a wise choice? Taking a breath, she reminded herself of her earlier conversations with Samantha. This was about authenticity, about connection. Stepping into that light, as terrifying as it felt, was a necessary leap toward growth. Her resolve hardened. She wouldn't retract her hand now. From Jenna, Sarah moved to the next name mark. He was another good friend, an ardent critic with a talent for constructive feedback. He had a way of seeing beyond flaws, of identifying the heart of a story. In a way, she needed him as a gauge could. Her writing would stand the scrutiny of someone who would sift through her insecurities to uncover truth. Before she could overthink it, she sent a similar invitation. 2 texts in, she felt both relief and lingering apprehension. With every name that appeared and disappeared under her fingertips, she felt herself teetering on the edge of something unprecedented. Messages flowed with more ease as she began to identify a theme, an undercurrent of people who had previously seen glimmers of potential within her. Each friend brought their own experience, perspective, and undoubtedly their own expectations. The thought of their support and potentially their judgments was scary, yet invigorating. In the moments between messages, Sarah's mind flickered to memories, their laughter, shared dreams, and moments of vulnerability that had bonded them all. She realized these friendships weren't just about being validated, but rather creating a dialogue that would challenge her storytelling skills. Her stories could be a vehicle for connection, for shared humanity. As she sent out the last of her invitations, a mixtape of emotions coursed through her. A part of her worried that unveiling her raw drafts might expose her, leaving her psychologically naked. Yet, another part welcomed the thought of transformation, where vulnerability could lead to empowerment. The day had morphed from a quiet cafe encounter into a turning point. Sarah's expectations for her writing had steadily shifted. She envisioned not just words on a page, but a continuum of conversation, shared steps on a path that had been previously solitary. But as she finished her outreach, one invitation remained uncomposed. John. His words had always been laced with irony, often disguising deeper truths behind humor. Part of her was apprehensive of his response. Would he be flippant, dismissive, or supportive? The unpredictability made her hesitate. Could she invite him, knowing that his presence might echo her insecurities? The fear rumbled in her stomach, a chaotic blend of anticipation and dread. But what was growth without confrontation? Even after everything, Sarah realized the necessity of facing the parts of herself that felt unfinished. Reaching out, she finally drafted a quick note and pressed send, embracing whatever response awaited her. The small cafe suddenly had transformed into a threshold, marking the entrance to a new chapter laden with expectations and uncertainties. As responses began to trickle in, Sarah felt both exhilarated and anxious, the conversations ahead unfolding like stories yet to be written. As the afternoon sun poured in through the cafe windows, casting a warm glow around her, Sarah gathered her notebook and stood up. She had taken the leap, but shortly after stepping away from the table, her phone buzzed with an unexpected reply from John. "Count me in. Let's see if your writing is as good as your coffee preferences." Her heart raced. In that instant, standing at the intersection of anticipation and doubt, she wondered how his presence would truly challenge her perspectives come launch day. What if their shared history reconfigured the narratives she felt emboldened to share? A fresh wave of anxiety washed over her. What truths might emerge in the light of those gathered? The weeks slipped by with an unrelenting mix of nervous excitement. Sarah engaged in an uncomfortable tango with her emotions, oscillating between anticipation and overwhelming dread. Each day brought her closer to the gathering, presenting a relentless barrage of doubts. Was her writing strong enough? Would her friends understand her vision? Perhaps inviting them was a mistake, a misstep on the path she thought she was finally defining. Her notebook became a battlefield, filled with crossed-out sentences as she tried to refine her work to the standards she felt were necessary. She analyzed word choices, plotting characters and emotions, like a chess player, anticipating her opponent's next move. Yet, the more she composed, the louder her inner critic became. A tight knot formed in her stomach as she considered the possibility of others questioning her capabilities. The reflections sounded like echoes of her pastimes, when every creative endeavor had been met with guffaws, or critiques, disguised as humor. One evening, in a moment of clarity, amid the frenetic mental chaos, Sarah scribbled the words "honesty raw" in the margins of her notes. The phrase resonated like a siren call, reminding her of the theme she wanted to explore. Vulnerability, translated into authenticity, would trump the fear of imperfection. The thought ignited a flicker of determination. She realized she wanted her stories to resonate deeply, to provoke thought and stir emotions. Jenna's flashing image danced in her mind, her intuitive advice, the nuances in her feedback that often struck where it hurt. It was a paradox. Sarah craved validation yet feared judgment from someone who understood her intimately. Shouldn't she trust Jenna to see beyond the surface flaws? Maybe Jenna's discerning eye could help raise her work to new heights. As the day of the gathering approached, Sarah crafted one final draft to present. She infused it with moments vulnerable enough to expose her fears, yet shielded with layers of resilience. This was more than mere narrative. It was a reflection of her journey, a mirror wherein she hoped her friends would not only witness her struggles, but would also see themselves. A day before the gathering, Sarah received a message from Mark. Excited for tomorrow. Can't wait to see the real you on those pages. There it was, again an invitation, a promise of dialogue rather than criticism. Her heart warmed, the swell of understanding buoying her spirits. Perhaps the catalyst for personal growth was not merely in her own reflection, but in how these relationships could uplift, challenge, and inspire her. No longer blinded by the fear of judgment, Sarah began to see it instead as a circle of trust friends, willing to share their perceptions with her. Strengthened by this realization, she committed to being open and receptive to whatever unfolded. As she rehearsed in front of her mirror, the potential for criticism transformed into an opportunity for growth, rather than a condemning verdict. Come launch day, the sun hung low in the early evening sky, casting orange hues that felt almost symbolic against the weight of unspoken truths to be laid bare. Sarah crafted an alluring aroma of her favorite brew to fill her space as she arranged chairs, setting the stage for her vision to take flight. When the doorbell rang, her heart quickened. One by one, her friends arrived, taking their seats with eager smiles. As laughter filled the room, Sarah's tension softened, and she inhaled the promise of discovery that lay ahead. The palpable energy shifted her focus. She was no longer the only one on trial, but rather a participant in a shared experience. Just before she began, John leaned over, whispering something that both shocked and thrilled her. "I'm here to see if you can sell me on what you write, or if I'm just here for the coffee." His mischievous tone stirred something ancient within her, a challenge to rise and meet his expectations. The moment felt pivotal. Standing at the precipice of unveiling her truth, she contemplated how to wield her insecurities into narratives that could provoke not just laughter, but deeper reflections and connections. The walls she had built felt like as much a reflection of protection as they were of her creativity. In this charged atmosphere, would she embrace her vulnerabilities, or continue to hide them behind carefully constructed barriers? As she opened her notebook, poised to share her heart, She realized that the true journey was not just about the words she had crafted, but about the connections those words could ignite. Taking a breath, she poised herself at the brink of revelation, ready for the chaos that might ensue or, perhaps, the profound understanding that could flourish from this moment. But what would happen if the very responses she sought pushed her further than she anticipated, forcing her to confront not only her writing but the entirety of herself? As Sarah stood there, her notebook open before her, and the expectant faces of her friends gazing back, an electric tension coursed through her. This was it. No more hiding behind protective barriers. She had committed herself to honesty, raw and unfiltered. Taking a deep breath, she began to read, each word a step into the unknown. The initial narrative flowed like a river breaking free from a dam, carrying her swiftly forward as she shared the vulnerability she had poured into every sentence. The familiar tightness in her chest slowly loosened with each passing page. She could see glimpses of recognition in her friends' eyes. They were with her, navigating this intricate landscape of emotion together. However, halfway through her piece, a sudden rustle from John disrupted the flow. He raised his hand tentatively, interrupting the cadence of her voice. "Can I ask something?" he said, leaning forward. An unsettling wave of apprehension washed over Sarah, and she felt her heart sink at the prospect of an impending critique. "Go ahead," she managed, steeling herself for whatever came next. "Why did you choose to reveal that part of your life? It's deeply personal, and I respect it, but it feels like you're laying your heart out like a map. Are you prepared for what happens if someone steps off the trails you've put down?" His question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Caught off guard, Sarah's mind raced. She had been so focused on nudging her boundaries, exposing herself to her friends, that she hadn't fully prepared for the responsibility that came with revealing her vulnerabilities. Was it wise to share so much? She searched the room for support, but instead felt the gravity of John's words weighing on her. Throughout her life, she'd always been careful about how much of herself she exposed, often retreating at the first sign of discomfort. Yet here she was, defying that instinct. Yet, why did it feel like a risk? As a response bubbled up, she grasped the chance to unveil a more complex truth. "I guess I've always felt like my past defined me. Every wound has felt like a scar I had to hide." A quiver in her voice surprised her. "Yet, by pulling these experiences out of the shadows, I hope to free myself from their hold." There was a stillness in the room as Sarah laid bare everything her fears of judgment, the sting of past failures, and the weight of expectations she placed on herself, as well as those she perceived from others. The honesty felt like a long-held breath escaping her body, unspooling moments of liberation entwined with trepidation. Mark shifted in his chair, breaking the silence with a thoughtful look. "But what if that honesty doesn't resonate the way you hope? What then? Does it matter?" She replied more fiercely than she intended, an edge creeping into her voice. "What I've learned is that truth, my truth, deserves to exist regardless of how it lands with others. It's about process and liftoff, not just reception." The faces before her revealed a mixture of awe and consideration. Had she, perhaps, shifted the narrative away from mere vulnerability into a brave assertion of identity? As Sarah wrapped up, a quiet transformation pulsated through the room. They began sharing their thoughts and reflections, the conversation blossoming into a dialogue rather than a critique. Responses flowed, rich and layered, each friend pulling from their own depths and candidly discussing their vulnerabilities. Sarah realized she was no longer standing at the precipice. She was soaring across a new landscape that was now intertwined with her friends' stories as well. This exchange was not merely about her journey, but the collective exploration of their shared humanity. But as laughter and connection flourished, a whisper of uncertainty remained in the back of Sarah's mind. Could she maintain this authentic version of herself amidst the pressures of daily life? Would the meaning crafted in this room withstand the inevitable distance and time? As the night wore on, a flicker of doubt sparked within her. The true heart of her personal development, might not just lie in sharing, but in sustaining that bridge of honesty, long after this gathering ended. With that realization, Sarah felt the unmistakable pull of fear. What if, after all this, she lost the momentum to keep confronting her vulnerabilities? Only time would tell, and the next chapter of her journey awaited her with bated breath. The morning after the gathering, Sarah awoke with a strange blend of exhilaration and dread. The warmth from her friends' encouragement still lingered, but it was overshadowed by the uncertainty that crept in as the day progressed. She found herself questioning how to translate the energy of that night into tangible change without sliding back into her old patterns. Through the day, the demands of work at the publishing house loomed over her like a storm cloud. Tasks that had once felt manageable now felt weighty, an uphill climb against gravity. She glanced around her sparsely decorated office. Notes and manuscripts sprawled chaotically over her desk, a stark contrast to the clarity she sought in her personal life. As she sifted through her emails, one subject line caught her eye: new submission opportunities, A weekly newsletter from a notable literary agent was scanned but otherwise ignored in recent months. Before allowing the temptation of avoidance to take hold, Sarah decided to click open the email. It prompted her to reframe her goals in writing, compelling her to visualize the barriers she erected in her mind. What if I took that leap? What if I dared to craft something bold, something original? These thoughts swirled amid the residue of last night's honesty. Each possibility teased her restless spirit, yet the fear of vulnerability bubbled ominously beneath the surface. Was she prepared to lay her heart bare in a manuscript, as she had with her friends? Hesitation gnawed at her, and she felt it as a tight knot in her stomach. Could she step outside her comfort zone and stand by the authenticity she had bravely asserted? It felt daunting to confront familiar insecurities. With time running out in the office, she decided to channel this tension into focus. Sarah reopened her notebook, its pages springing to life with her written words from the night before. Perhaps this created space for an unfiltered expression of self that could ignite others, like her friends had ignited her. Reflecting on that, she pulled her ideas into outlines, feelings into structured thoughts, launching herself deeper into creative exploration, with passion uncharacteristic of her usual cautious approach. Yet, as she crafted paragraphs, another voice echoed within her: John's question about the maps she laid out. Was she drawing a path only to watch as others strayed from it? Her pencil halted mid-sentence, and doubt drenched her concentration. Engaging creatively was one thing. Inviting judgment and feedback was another. Is this worth risking? She whispered to herself. The answer loomed larger than life. Wrapped in a challenge, she felt herself slowly rising to meet. The buzzing of her phone brought her back from introspection: a text from her friend, Kylie, inviting her to a local poetry reading that evening. Without thinking, Sarah typed a quick response, mentally shifting gears from the fear she felt toward an exhilarating anticipation. Courageously, she resolved to attend, perhaps even share something of her own. The thought of standing in front of others again fueled a vulnerability she had never expected to embrace. Yet within that excitement, remnants of her reluctance lingered. The invite freed her, but what if this time she didn't receive warm responses? What if she was met with indifference instead? As the hours ticked down toward that evening, she wrestled with her fears, pulse quickening as she wondered how far this new commitment to herself would carry her. Would she allow the lessons learned last night to compel her to step forward, to confront the risk of rejection once more? Dusk settled over the city as Sarah dressed with trembling fingers. The reflection in the mirror revealing a different version of herself, steely resolve, framed by a glimmer of vulnerability. Tonight would be a test, a confrontation with the potential to spark renewed growth and deeper honesty. It lay before her like an open road, marked and wild. Would she miss the chance to soar, or harness the courage within to embrace her truth? The possibilities churned ominously in her gut as she stepped outside, breath held tight in anticipation. The atmosphere at the poetry reading was electric, an enticing blend of curiosity and camaraderie. It enveloped Sarah as she navigated through the crowd, her heart racing with equal parts excitement and trepidation. The low hum of conversation buzzed around her, invigorating yet daunting. Having stepped out of her comfort zone, she felt ready to confront her fears head-on. Tonight wasn't just another social outing, it was a pivotal moment in her evolution as a storyteller. As she settled into a corner seat, the warm glow of dim lights cast inviting shadows across the room, creating a cocoon of intimacy. Emerging poets took turns sharing their pieces, words spilling over like music, each syllable painting raw emotions that resonated deeply. Sarah listened intently, surrendering to the rhythm of their storytelling, absorbing their vulnerabilities like a sponge. Could she do the same? The idea pulsed through her, igniting the fire that had been stoked during her gathering with friends. She replayed their supportive remarks, the gentle encouragements, each positive word, acting as a binding tether to her courage. Yet lingering in the corner of her mind was the unsettling thought of judgment. It threatened to put a damper on her resolve. As she waited for her turn on stage, every heartbeat felt like a countdown against a backdrop filled with her fears. What if the audience remained unmoved? What if her words fell flat? Yet, amidst the chaos of uncertainty, stood a spark of determination. She couldn't falter now. She had come too far. Finally, her name resonated through the air, a call to rise, and Sarah stood, heart racing, ready to embrace the moment. She felt the gaze of her friends, their supportive energy enveloping her like a shield. It was time to share the stories that had been simmering inside her, begging for the light and space to breathe. "Hi, I'm Sarah," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Tonight, I want to share a piece about facing fears, about transforming trials into something beautiful. It's called When Shadows Speak." As she began reciting her poem, a tapestry, woven from threads of her past uncertainties and newfound ambitions, she let her vulnerability flow like a river, unburdening herself to an audience that, at first, felt intimidating. But as verses emerged, mingled with pieces of her heart, she quickly found her rhythm. Each word she delivered held power, each narrative moment a tribute to her journey of self-discovery. The crowd responded with attentive silence, and the very act of unveiling her inner world liberated her, unfurling the constraints of self-doubt that had once ensnared her. Finishing her performance to a heartfelt round of applause, Sarah's cheeks flushed with exhilaration and disbelief. The patter of clapping hands echoed in her ears like a victorious anthem. She had not only shared her voice but had confronted the fears that had held her captive for far too long. The applause morphed into the warm embrace of validation she had craved, each clap a resonance of acceptance. After the performance, friends rushed to her side, their faces alive with excitement. "You were incredible," shouted Jenna, her eyes glowing with pride. "I felt every word. There's so much heart in what you've created." Others chimed in, sharing specific lines that had resonated with them, affirming the raw authenticity she had stepped bravely into. As the conversations flowed, Sarah felt buoyed by their words, building a deeper connection, not just with them, but also with herself. That evening marked a seismic shift. Sarah had not merely stepped into a space of performance, but had taken ownership of her narrative. With newfound clarity, she realized that her stories held power, not simply for validation, but as a means of connection. The vulnerability she once feared was now her greatest asset. Driving home, an exhilarating sense of accomplishment swelled within her. She was empowered, newly aware of her capacity to transform trauma into strength, stories into bridges. The shadows that once felt daunting now felt like companions guiding her journey. She was no longer just a storyteller, but a creator of her own narrative, armed with the tools to confront whatever lay ahead. As she parked her car, Sarah's mind buzzed with the possibilities her writing could bring forth: new narratives, new connections. This was the beginning of her journey as an authentic voice. She had conquered the most daunting obstacle of all, the fear of self-exposure, and, in doing so, had unearthed a solid foundation of confidence that she would continue to build upon. With every step she took toward her future, she moved closer to embracing her dreams. This was an evolution she had long desired, and she recognized it as just the first step in a continually expansive journey. With her head held high, she strode toward her door, ready to communicate her stories, hers, and those that would emerge, creating, sharing, and ultimately inspiring others along the way. This was not merely the conclusion of a chapter. It was the definitive beginning of an extraordinary story, yet to unfold, a testament to hope, resilience, and the determination to pursue one's truth. You need to subscribe now to the channel to keep witnessing the journeys of transformation that will inspire and propel you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these crucial narratives reach those who need them most. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's remarkable conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who are seeking their own paths of creativity and resilience. Don't wait even one more second to share.